Welcome to the Greg and Camille Baroni Center podcast, inside the business of government where policy meets practice. I'm your host, Mike Derrios, pulling back the curtain on how government really buys what it needs, from major systems to everyday mission essentials. Produced by the Baroni Center at the George Mason University Costello College of Business. Hear lively, candid conversations with the leaders and practitioners shaping federal acquisition. Let's get started. Hello to our listeners and welcome back to the podcast. Today I am joined by the one and only Soraya Correa, Chief Executive Officer for the National Industries for the Blind and former Chief Procurement Officer for the Department of Homeland Security. Soraya, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you for that lovely introduction, the one and only. Woo.
Soraya, so before we get going with today's topic, why don't you educate our audience a little bit about the mission of NIB?
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you. And thank you again for having me here today. So at National Industries for the Blind, we're one of two central nonprofit agencies that support the federal government's Ability One program. And the Ability One program is a program that's focused on using procurement to create job opportunities for individuals who are blind or have significant disabilities. At National Industries for the Blind, we focus on blind employment. We manufacture all forms of products. In fact, primarily we manufacture products, whether it's office products, janitorial sanitation products, tools, equipment, that are used by the federal government on a day-to-day basis to meet their mission objectives. The other thing that we do is we provide some services like contract management support, near and dear to my heart. But it's just a wonderful program. It's an opportunity to continue to serve and help others. It's an exciting opportunity, and I invite you and others that don't know about National Industries for the Blind to come visit us. We have about 100 nonprofit agencies across the country, 58 of which are producing companies. In other words, they have manufacturing facilities and provide services. And it's amazing to see the great work that's done by individuals who are blind or low vision in manufacturing products and meeting the needs of the federal government. Definitely an exciting opportunity, and I'm so glad I'm there.
That sounds like an amazing mission, and you did a great job of highlighting the work that the people do. That's a perfect segue into what we're going to be talking about today, which is workforce, specifically the federal acquisition workforce. And we wanted to invite you onto the podcast, just given your tremendous perspective on acquisition workforce issues in general. And especially, I think, at this point in time with so much change happening in the landscape. So I want to ask you a question about the fact that we have seen attrition, I think, historic attrition, frankly, in this job series, the 1102 job series contract specialist, for those that are not familiar. But I would offer workforce is broader than just that, not just the contract specialist and the contracting officers. A lot of program managers have left. A lot of cores have left. And so with the federal workforce experiencing, significant departures and also having hiring constraints, there's been some disruption. What do you think has been lost through all of this in terms of the acquisition workforce, and what are the losses that are going to be the hardest to recover?
So that's a great question, by the way, because we often focus on the head count, right? We think about the numbers of people that have gone. I like to think about what actually have we lost. What we've lost is a lot of experience, a lot of capability to help and mentor others. Acquisition is something that requires good business judgment. Anybody who understands the profession, whether you're in the program management side, the actual contracting side, or in one of the support organizations like security, like HR, that are part of that CXO suite that comes together to meet mission outcomes for an agency. What's important is really the business judgment that people are using, how they bring the team together, how they work collaboratively to bring good business solutions to the fore to address mission need. And unfortunately, that's what you're really losing. It's not the numbers of people, it's the quality of the people who really have been around, have done things, have experienced, what the typical problems are and how to solve them. That doesn't mean that it's all bad. I mean, it's good to bring some new breed of thinking, but you still need some of that experience to counter some of that newness. The other thing is, with the people that are leaving, the people that are really experienced and mentor others, as we're going through this process with the revolutionary FAR overhaul, you're going to need those folks.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. I always point to this. I spent 40 years working under the existing federal acquisition regulation, and we got it all done. With the revolutionary FAR overhaul, we have an opportunity to do things differently, maybe do them better and more effectively. You need people with experience to help guide that a little bit. Again, I don't want to tell the new folks coming in what to do. I want to guide them through the process. Tell them where the landmines are and how to navigate them, but cut them loose to do great things with the flexibilities that are built in. But that's my biggest concern, is that experience, that good business judgment, and that ability to teach others, to share with others that knowledge. So that's what scares. Of course, headcount matters, right? Because the more work you got, the harder it gets to do some of these things. But I'm more concerned about that loss of experience and sound business judgment, because we've worked really hard to develop that. I know at DHS, you know that I had the Procurement Innovation Lab. That was my goal in life, right? Get people critical thinking skills,
Yeah.
strategic thinking, bring the team together.
Yeah.
So.
And you really did launch an era of innovation. So we're going to be talking to Trevor Wagner at some
wonderful.
point, and so you've replicated that across government, which is fantastic. I was talking to somebody yesterday actually about this very topic, and we were saying the same thing about the fact that you had some junior folks that left last year because of the opportunity. You had a lot of senior folks leave though, and that was already happening at a time when we knew generationally we were going to see an exodus of people.
Exactly.
So I think it's become a bit exacerbated. And who's left to train? That's going to be the challenge.
And it's the speed with which they left, right? Some people left abruptly. There wasn't really time for transition, time for, if you will, data dumps, if you will, what I call them, brain dumps. And it's unfortunate, because I think this is a fantastic profession, and I think we need that those people with that experience to also be out here talking about what this profession really represents. A lot of people don't understand what
That's true.
acquisition really is in federal government.
That's
And what I was always fond of telling people was, I get to do things that you are never going to do in industry. I make billion-dollar decisions. I affect mission outcomes. I get right next to that mission, and I get to help solve problems. It's not the administrator. I never told anybody I wrote contracts. And whenever anybody is, I'm a mission enabler. That's what we do. And losing the people that understand it and really have a passion for it and can really explain it and bring in that new cadre. Because I'm all for the turnover. You remember me, I was always pushing, intern programs and, detail opportunities and things like that, so that people could maximize their experience and bring a continuous succession in, if you will. We've lost some of those people that can really talk passionately about what it means to serve in the federal government and to work in this profession. And that, to me, that pains me, right? That's why I'm still out here talking about it. I mean, I know I'm an old relic. Most people don't want to hear from me, but I'm still passionate about this. I really am.
Yeah. No, I would disagree. I think a lot of people still want to hear your voice. That's why you're on this podcast with us. You make a great point that the mentorship is just as important as the training.
Yes.
It really is. You were mentioning the RFO. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
So it's going to introduce discretion, right? Which requires a unique skill set in and of itself to exercise. Given that you've had this much attrition, how do you think agencies are going to navigate that? How do you get contracting professionals to get comfortable exercising discretion in this space that's highly regulated, without having people to kind of help coach them up?
Therein lies the question of leadership. And I've always believed that. I believe the contracting professionals, they set out to do a great job. They want to abide by the rules, but they also want to make good deals. They want to make sure that they're meeting the goals of the organization, meeting the mission objectives of their customers, supporting their customers properly. It's very rare that you run into a CO that isn't thinking that way. The question is leadership. You're going to ask people to exercise good business judgment. You're going to ask them to take risks, to mitigate risks, to think about the risks, to be flexible, to be innovative. That requires strong leadership. That requires leadership that really understands the fundamentals of what you're asking people to do and supports people in doing that. And that means accepting that things are going to be done differently, not the way you're used to seeing them as a leader, that you may have to accept some failures along the way and support your people when those failures happen. Because those failures aren't going to happen because of poor performance. They're going to happen because of circumstances beyond their control. The things that we don't know. You know, when you experiment, you're going to learn a few new things. What I always used to say to the staff was, ask most successful people. They will tell you they have failed more than once in their lives, but they recovered. And it takes strong leadership to be able to do that, to accept that, and to be able to explain it to others. And that's my concern with the RFO. I love what we've done with the RFO, the things that I've read. I know several of the people that are working on that document, very proud of their great work. The question's going to be, are we going to have the right leadership in place to help implement that RFO, to help navigate the workforce through the change and do it effectively, right? When the RFO was kind of like what I was doing with the Procurement Innovation Lab, except that I was working within the parameters of what existed within the FAR. But the license that I gave to folks was, let's go talk to the people that bang on the keyboard every day, right? The person that does the day-to-day job, and ask them, how do we do this differently? How do we do this better? If you could do this without any constraints, how would you go about doing it? And then you got to support them. And that's what we were doing through the Procurement Innovation Lab. That's what I did. Stand with my folks and say, yeah, we're going to give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, well, that's on me. And if it works out, well, you get to take all the credit. And that's important. People need to know that their leadership is supporting them. So when I think about the Revolutionary FAR overhaul, I'm excited by the opportunity that it brings. I really am. I think it's good, everything that they've done. But I fear that sometimes leaders might lean back into a more risk-averse approach because we still have the protest out there. We still have the front page of the Post, as we used to like to joke around, right? Now you have
The place you do not want to be.
Exactly. Now you have social media to add to that, right? But you have all these factors that come up and instill fear in people, and it takes strong leaders to say, no, we're not going to work out of fear. We're going to focus on doing the right thing for the right reasons, and we'll help people understand what we did and why we did it.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned explaining it to others. Let's talk about the impacts of acquisition workforce shortages, because, you know, that may not necessarily be apparent to, you know, the everyday person that just knows that the government spends taxpayer dollars, or to, you know, in some cases, the companies that are doing the work. So let's talk a little bit about the impacts. You know, I'm sure you're aware, GAO found that heavy workloads, you know, were a contributing factor, you know, to challenges at DHS, and I would offer that's probably everywhere.
Exactly.
But you know, what do those workforce or workload pressures do in terms of affecting the quality of the work? How does it affect the ability to, you know, run effective competitions, to introduce innovation, to your point? You know, let's talk a little bit about the impacts of the shortages.
Sure. When you have a heavy workload, you're focused on getting the job done. And so you're trying to process transactions much faster, and you're thinking of the world in the form of transactions, right? You're thinking, I have this requisition, I got to get it done, I got to get something awarded. So you start to lean into what you already know, not what you could be doing, right? You'll lean right back into, this is how I've always done it. And that's what we're really trying to break with the RFO. We're trying to break this is how I've always done it. Let's come up with the right solution for the procurement. And certainly you're not going to, you know, think 100, when you're processing, I don't know, 50 transactions, you're not going to think of everything in a very strategic way. but you're going to take the most important procurements and hopefully spend the time to do some good market research, to talk to industry, to learn what the customer's requirements are, perhaps to go sit with the customer, with industry.
Novel concept.
To
right?
have conversations, right? To really understand. I think it's a 4-letter word. It's called plan. I tend to throw that one out there all the time. But it really, I think that important upfront work that has to be done to think through strategically how we're going to do that, that's what gets lost. And it suffers across the board. Like I said, smaller transactions, the easy routine stuff, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those important contracts. The contract that maybe didn't go well the last time.
Yeah,
The contract where you weren't happy with the vendor before and now you want to pick a better vendor. Or the contract that while it may not have a large dollar value, it has a huge mission impact.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We always think about the high dollar ones, but we don't think about those small ones.
Those low dollar ones can sometimes be just as important, if not more important, than the big ones.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we lose. We lose that ability to really use that good judgment that they're asking us to use, that good business judgment, because we're pressured by the workload. And it's hard. Look, I've been there. I lived that life. I came up as a contracting professional, from contract specialist all the way up to contracting officer to become a CPO. And I still remember those days when I was staring at a stack of requisitions on my desk and I had to decide, how could I process those as quickly as possible by the end of the year? Right. And if I may throw a little pearly nugget out there, we have a Congress that can't give us a budget before mid-year. So that adds to the pressure and the workload. Yeah. And so we have to figure out how we're going to manage that workload. And I got to tell you, one of the things I'm proud of this profession, that in 40 plus years that I spent in it, and even now, we never fail the mission. We never fail. People need to think about that.
Yeah.
But are we doing the best job? You know, everybody likes to criticize the contracting professionals and sometimes even our program managers. We get criticized. Well, people need to think about the workload that we impose on these folks and the and the limits that we put on them. One of them being, you don't know what your budget's going to be till halfway through the year.
Right.
And now it's crunch time and we got to get it done. And what we give up, and it's something that's always been near and dear to my heart, is that engagement with industry. Oh, yeah. I believe that is the most essential thing that we do in our profession, that the more that we can collaborate with industry, really understand what's out there, what's the market, what is the capability that's out there, and how we can tap that and bring it in and help us achieve the mission success that we seek. When we give that up, we're giving up great solutions.
I totally agree.
And efficiency, by the way. And by the way, I've always said, the more we do up front, the easier it becomes
That's
down
exactly
the line.
right.
It really does.
Right. Yeah. So much we can unpack there.
Yeah.
I can't agree with you more about, the fact that the engagement with industry, which is so critical, it's going to take a hit. Because again, I was chatting with somebody recently about, why don't contracting officers pick up the phone? And my response back was, you have no idea what the workload is.
Yeah, time.
Obviously, you've got some folks that are just a little risk averse, and then,
a little,
and there's always been that in the work. If I talk to one company, I can't talk to all. There's always that. But
that one of the things that I did when I was at DHS, I had the opportunity to go and visit with folks who were taking their program management classes, especially the program managers, but also COs. But one of the things I used to tell folks, I'll give you $100 if you can show me where in the FAR it says that if I talk to one, I must talk to the other.
Bingo.
Because it doesn't say that. What it
exactly.
says is you can't give an unfair competitive advantage. Right. So the advice I used to give people, and it's a little crazy. I used to drive the lawyers crazy with this, but I used to say, if you accidentally tell a vendor something, publish it in SAM.
That's it.
Publish it. That's it. Because they just have to know that the information is out there. You just have to give that information to everybody. We've created a culture of risk aversion, a fear of saying something wrong. You know what? I've never sat in a room with industry where they were taking such copious notes that they were prepared to quote me. In fact, industry loves it when you talk to them. They really appreciate it because they want to understand the problem. Yeah. They want to know what you're looking for. They want to build you the next, big thing that you want. And they also want to make a smart business decision about, do I really even want to do this?
Right. That's exactly it. Is this the right one for me to go after? That's
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that you talked about the strategic aspect of the work and the decision making that goes into that. It's the work is never or should never be treated as just transactional.
Exactly.
But oftentimes, I think our folks fall into that because of how crushing the volume is. It can be easy to just go into, well, I've got these 20, I've got to move through them fast,
Right.
and I don't have time to, do the due diligence with the companies, really craft a unique, acquisition strategy that is tailored for this one. And so
Right.
things become cookie cutter. I mean, there's so many, I think, effects of the pressure that's on the workforce.
But that's that balancing of understanding the mission.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always emphasize, what's the mission you're serving? Your customer. Go talk to that customer.
Yeah.
Identify what their priorities are.
Yeah.
And understand what's complex to them and what's routine to them, because then that helps you sort that priority, and we can focus on those things that are really mission essential and say, these are routine, we're going to do these as quickly as we can, we're going to put some energy up behind these
Yeah.
and put some thought into these.
Yeah, and going back to the topic overall about the acquisition workforce shortages now, that's going to be
harder.
missing.
That's gonna become harder.
That mentorship of a senior person coaching somebody that's newer into the field up and helping them to understand how to prioritize their workload.
Exactly.
Helping them to understand how to engage with the program office customer effectively, and
And how to
understand
bring in the
mission.
other support staff,
Yeah.
right? One of the things that I thought we did very effectively at DHS, at least while I was there, and I think it still goes on now, our CXO suite was very united. In other words, when I went in to talk to a customer about a particular procurement, if there was an IT issue associated with it, or an HR element, or a security element, I brought in my counterparts. I would immediately pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, we're talking about this and it's going to have an impact on you. And we would come together to meet with those customers. That's lost if you don't
Yeah.
have somebody teaching people to think that way, to think in that bigger strategic approach that says, we are one element of the group of people that enable this mission, right?
Yeah.
And you need to know how to bring your counterparts in.
Yeah, yeah. The critical thinking skills are just so important in this field, and they don't always come naturally,
No.
to somebody who may be very analytical in nature, but needs
Right.
to be brought along, so to speak, and the behavior kind of needs to be demonstrated for them.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, and this is where leadership matters. Because leadership can look at their staff and assess and team people together. In other words, it's not all the mentoring doesn't come from the leader, the person that's running the organization. Some of it comes from teaming people together. There were many times that I would be talking to a particular senior individual and say, on your team, I noticed that this person doesn't seem to do X or doesn't seem to understand X. You should talk to them, right? So sometimes that's what you need, is that marrying of people, that bringing people together. And that's one of the things that we do as leaders.
Yeah. So you gave me a perfect segue. You mentioned people several times.
It's my favorite topic.
I think that as we know, AI is here. And so that's another thing that plays into this. You need the leaders to help the organization get comfortable with the introduction of this technology, because I think, frankly, there's absolutely an opportunity
Huge benefits.
to leverage this. Tremendous upside. But you can't just throw it at the workforce that has atrophied a little bit, and expect them to just readily adopt it and understand how to do that and become prompt engineers overnight. So I think that the emphasis on people needs to come back.
Oh yeah,
You know.
yeah. So I'm a huge fan of technology. I live and breathe it, and I love it. And I had great partnerships with my CIOs for that reason. Not only because we were buying technology, but also because I was introducing technology into our world and trying to find effective ways to use it to support the work staff. And what I like to say is, there are a lot of people out there that seem to think that AI can bring you the answer, right? You can just feed it a lot of
Right.
data and it'll give you the answer. Let me share with you a couple of examples where I've had to teach AI the right answer. All kidding aside, where I've fed it information, I said, bring me back, I don't know, who buys XYZ, pick a product, right? And it came back and it missed DHS.
Oh,
And I
gosh.
went, whoopsie, you missed DHS, right? And it came back and said, you're right, I missed DHS. Or I asked it to give me references from the FAR regarding, I don't know, domestic sourcing. And it missed a few key references. My point is this: you will need that person with the knowledge and the skills to read through the solution or the information that AI brings you back
Absolutely.
to make sure it's accurate.
Yeah.
Because the machine doesn't know everything. It has to learn, right? It still has to learn. And you know what? It's like you and me. No matter how much we teach it, we're not going to know it all.
That's it.
Think about that.
that's
It's
it.
just, it can react faster than you and I, right? When it asks me, these days, especially as I'm getting older, when you ask me, what FAR part talks about blah, 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 I go, let me think about that, right? It takes me a little bit longer to find it. And so it gives you information back quickly, but you have to read it. And by the way, I advise anybody using AI, read it word for word.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You will find errors.
Yeah.
But is it a useful tool? Can it make you more efficient? Can it help you streamline processes? Of course it can. And wherever we can use it effectively, I say let's go for it. What we have to, though, understand is the risks.
Yeah.
What you give it, what data can you feed it and what data you should feed it, and then also how you use it and where you use it in the process.
Totally agree.
But I am a huge fan. Technology is the best thing that can happen. I think it can make us a heck of a lot more efficient and effective in doing the job. I think of people like cost and price analysts.
Oh, yeah.
Think about it. The data that they can get in their hands to support the information, helping us do market research, helping us understand industry. There are people that are scared that industry, is using it to write proposals. Okay. How did you know who was writing the proposal before? That's the question I was asked. The question isn't who writes the proposal. How can I evaluate that proposal?
That's it.
What do I know? What do I understand? Right. So I'm a huge fan of the technology. I think it's here to stay. And I always encourage the bringing in of the CIO organization to help you use it effectively, to help you understand it, help you develop it, and adapt it to your environment. And believe you me, there are some great people out there that do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's got to be an equal investment in the acquisition workforce and the technology
Yes.
for government to really, see the benefits of its use.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the future.
Yes.
So there might be some folks that are uncertain about whether or not they want to explore a career with the government. And you mentioned early on in the episode here that a lot of people just don't understand what government contracting is in general. So what do you think that leaders need to be doing to try to attract that workforce of the future?
They need to do something Soraya used to do all the time: marketing. You get out there and you sell the profession.
Yeah.
I always made it a point to try to find ways to recruit people, to talk to people about what this profession was really about, why I was in it, and why I stayed in it. I was in it for 40 years and I had plenty of opportunity to leave, come back, but I kept sticking with it. And it was because of the excitement of fulfilling a mission. I mean, I always think back to when we stood up the Department of Homeland Security. I was working for Immigration and Naturalization Service, and I was when I had made one of my crazy career moves and I moved over into IT, and I spent about 10 years there, right? And then we stood up the Department of Homeland Security. I actually had an opportunity to leave INS and go work at another federal agency, but I thought to myself, wow, I could be at the ground level of standing up an agency, be a part of building something, right? These are the opportunities you get in government, and we have to talk about those things. And we have to talk about more than the transaction, right? Yes, we work in contracting, we write contracts, we issue purchase orders and all that good fun stuff. That's not what makes this job important. What makes this job important is that we are sitting at the table helping deliver a mission, that impacts the American people we serve.
Yeah.
That is the reason I was there. Every day that I came in, and even today when I talk to CEOs, I miss it. I still miss it because it's such an impactful mission that we serve. Probably why I'm at National Industries for the Blind, because it's an impactful mission.
Yeah.
I'm all about the mission, and I'm all about the service to the American people. And so when we go out there and talk about this profession, we need to be as passionate as possible, as inspiring as possible, and we need to really talk about fundamentally what we're doing here. The expertise that you bring, how you impact mission, and why you're there. And I like talking about the things that you're going to see and do that you will never get a chance to do in other jobs.
Absolutely.
The example I always give is when I started my career very early on, when I was working for Navy, I worked on the Space Shuttle Challenger salvage operation because I worked for Navy Diving and Salvage. Who knew that years later I would work for NASA, helping build the space station? Who knew that I would work for a Department of Homeland Security, and that when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, my family's from Puerto Rico, that I would have time, I would spend time there helping that. These are the things that I think about, and I get choked up when I think about it because where else do you get an opportunity to do these things, right?
Yeah.
And to help others. And when I think about my job today, right? When every time that I walk through a manufacturing facility or I talk to employees in these manufacturing facilities and I hear their story and why they're there and why they're so passionate about helping serve the federal government of the United States.
Yeah.
So we have to be proud of our government. It doesn't make mistakes, of course it does, but we have to be proud of it. I love this country. I love my government, and I want to be a part of always making it better and more efficient. And so that's what we need to sell. That's what we need to market, right?
I totally agree.
You know, and we don't do that. We don't do that very well, right?
I think you're right. I think that that marketing element has got to be brought into the recruitment process,
Yes.
and it has to be, I think, going forward, a more deliberate recruitment process.
Yes.
I love your point about exposing people to the mission, especially contracting professionals that don't always understand how their work translates to those mission outcomes.
I always tried to make that connection for them.
Yeah,
I used to tell folks every morning I would get up, as much as I didn't like coming into the office early, but I always turned on my TV and watched the news.
Yeah.
We're always in
Because you can
news.
see it. You can see the
mission.
impacts of your work. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't we have Hurricane Bertha floating around out here?
Yeah.
That's mission.
That's it.
That's mission. And it's a whole bunch of people. It's not just FEMA.
Yeah.
It's going to be Coast Guard.
Right.
It's going to be CBP. Because what a lot of people don't understand, the federal government joins forces to solve problems.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we join forces with state and local to help solve problems and even with industry. So we got to sell that. We got to tell people about that. And we got to get to people, not just in college, we got to get to people in high school.
Absolutely.
In high
Bingo.
school.
Yeah.
Start there, right?
Yeah.
Sell what we do. Talk about the missions we serve. Bring people in to really talk about where these careers can take you. I mean, this little girl from the Bronx who moved here when she was 9 years old, and my father did work in government, and he encouraged me. But I took a job as a clerk typist. That's all it was. It was just a job. And it turned into a career that led me to be the Chief Procurement Officer of the Department of Homeland Security. Yeah. That led me to then retire because I said, you know, I'm getting old school here. No. And come out into the private world and come into yet another mission-focused area that serves our government but serves the American people. This is what it's all about.
It really is. It really is. Yeah. You gave me the perfect segue, I think, also to start to move into closing out our time here. You talked about, you know, getting in early and talking to people about the field. You know, that's something that we're trying to do here at George Mason. We have campuses with 40,000 brilliant minds on them, and we're trying to educate them about this unique world of work that is tied to an $800 billion industry sector. A lot of career opportunities because the government is always going to need to partner with industry to get its mission done. So, yeah, I love what you said there, and I think leaders are going to have to start much earlier, and think very creatively and deliberately about how they want to recruit, and not just say, go to this website and throw your name in the hat.
So I'll give-
Expose people to the mission before the job announcement is out
Exactly. So if I can give you a couple of examples,
Yeah,
whenever I went out and spoke at industry associations or to industry groups, one of my favorite CIOs, I think you know who I'm talking about. You'll know who I'm talking about. We used to always remind people. We used to go, "Have you ever tried working for the federal government?" I'm like giving a speech,
Yeah.
and at the end of it, I go, "And if you're interested, we're always looking for really good people.
Yeah.
Come talk to me about federal service. Give it a try." That's called marketing.
Absolutely.
And people would come and talk to me. And I hired quite a few people from industry and brought them in. But the other thing that I did was I actually staged opportunities for people to learn about the DHS acquisition community. I think you
Absolutely.
supported me on a
Yeah.
couple of them where I brought the heads of contracting from the different components and we told people what we did.
Yeah.
And I was recruiting other federal employees. Yes, I was stealing them from other agencies because,
That's
it's
part of
fair
the game.
It's called
That's
fair
it.
game. That's right.
it.
But my point was educate people on what the missions are, what the work is, and why it's fun to work in a particular place or to learn something new or to try something different. And you know what? And if you didn't want to come work for me, at least I developed a partner.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Network, right?
Totally agree.
So I think that we have to do a better job of that. I think that leaders have to do a better job of inviting people into the profession, both on the industry and government side.
I agree. Yes.
And I think we
Yeah.
need that revolving door, by the way, going from industry to government, government to industry, whether working at the state, local, or federal level. It all applies. It
Absolutely.
really does. And you
Yeah.
learn so much.
It does, yeah. Somebody that I mentored back at TSA a long, long time ago is now working. I believe he's the Deputy Chief Procurement Officer for a state GSA.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was so proud to see that. Like,
Exactly.
wow, you can demonstrate impact in a variety of places.
Exactly.
And it's an ecosystem. I loved your point about when we think about at the Baroni Center the acquisition workforce, we absolutely think about it on both sides. It's not
Exactly.
just we spent a lot of time today talking about government,
Right.
but industry.
Yeah.
They are a huge part of our workforce.
Exactly.
And we want to see opportunities there as well. So the Baroni Center, as you know, Soraya, is really in a unique position to try to serve as a bridge between government, industry, and academia. And in conjunction with that, we have a tradition that we've started on the podcast called the bridging question. So we want to be a force multiplier for building the bridges across the ecosystem. So we have a question that has been left for you from our former or previous guest. And you'll have the opportunity to write a question for the next guest after you. I'm going to ask you that question now. And the intent here behind these bridging questions, again, is to really, regardless of what your specialty is or your passion area, it's to get people thinking about the government contracting industry, holistically, because a lot of people have great perspectives, regardless of what your niche area is. So here's the question that's been left for you.
Here comes the trick question. Yeah, no, just kidding.
What would you say, or what advice would you give to small businesses that may not be feeling valued right now?
So first of all, why aren't you feeling valued? That would be my initial question. Our value is not, and I say our value industry because now I'm on the industry and I'm on the nonprofit side. And like small businesses, yeah, I feel that pinch. I feel that perhaps we're not being considered as thoughtfully as they should be. What I would say is, but why are you feeling that way? And what are you doing to overcome that? I mean, we can let people make us feel certain ways, or we can be proactive and change that feeling. What I would say is, it's not that small businesses aren't being valued. It's that the challenge that people have is what we've been talking about. It feels like we're not valuing them because we're not spending the time talking to one another. We're not spending the time researching who's out there, who are the small businesses that are out there. And from a small business perspective, and even the nonprofits, are we being sufficiently assertive and dare I say, aggressive to pursue the government and say, look at us, we are here, look at what we do, look at what capabilities we bring. I have always had a passion and a commitment for the smalls. You know that I used to argue that. Nothing against my large businesses out here, but I always felt that we need to pay attention to what's going on with the small business community and how do we support them and enable them to come into this market and be successful in this market, successful for us, help us deliver mission. Because at the small business level, at the nonprofit level where we are now, we are the folks that are innovative. We have a lot of flexibility and ability to move and shift, sometimes a little easier than the large businesses because they're actually bureaucracies at many times. But we have to decide what our value proposition is. Don't let someone else decide that for you. And if you think you're not being valued, then get out there and talk to people and let them know who you are, what you do, and how well you do it. Conversely, I always used to say this, and it sounds so small, but it's so true. What was a large business before it was large? Oops, it was small.
It was small.
Or it
right.
was a not-for-profit, because some of them grow up to become, profit-making organizations.
Right.
So find your own value. Don't let anybody else tell you what your value is. And that's true as a human being as well, but as a small business. And what I would say is, I don't think that it's that you're not valued. It's just that the pressure is on. There's a lot of pressure, and the contracting officers, the acquisition community doesn't have a lot of time to stroke people. I hate to say that, but that's the truth. And so get out there and talk to them and make sure that people know who you are, what you do, and how well you do it. And that's extremely important.
Yeah.
How well you do it.
Very powerful. And I would add, if the question is also pertinent to, regulatory changes, right? Well, adapt.
Adapt. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and don't.
And I know I don't say that lightly, but I think that small businesses are absolutely going to have to adapt.
They're going to have to adapt. Yeah. Well, let's see what the rulemaking does, right? But yeah, there have been some changes in the regulations. We're impacted by some of those changes as well, and it is challenging. But you also got to get out there and tell people what the impacts are, right? Don't be afraid to go tell people, like folks on the Hill, the White House, whoever, hey, this change, here's the impact that it could have. And here's why it may not be beneficial to you to make this change. Let's have the conversation, but don't just sit back and say, I don't feel valued, because that's not going to work.
Yeah.
We got to get out there and just be aggressive, be assertive, fight the fight, fight the good fight. It's the same thing. It's marketing again. Here I go.
That's it. By the
Do
time,
I get to ask a question? Just
I don't know. That may have to be something that we introduce later.
I'm kidding. No, but I love the bridging question. I think that's it's a really that's powerful, because it does make you stop and think, and it helps us shape the conversation going forward, because we got to keep the conversation
It is a
going.
collective conversation.
It is.
It is. That's it. Well, Soraya, this has been fantastic.
Thank
It's
you.
always great to see you. And thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Mike, and it's just a privilege to be here with you. And congratulations on your job. I
Oh,
think
thank
what
you so
you're
much.
doing is so important. And anything I can do to help our acquisition workforce out here, I'm always available.
Awesome. Take care.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Greg and Camille Baroni Center podcast, Inside the Business of Government, where policy meets practice. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to our list and join us for more insights into evolving government procurement. Go to govcon.gmu.edu. That's govcon.gmu.edu. Thanks for tuning in.